Picture this. It's 2 a.m. You're exhausted, but somehow still scrolling through YouTube. And suddenly you stumble across a Family Guy compilation that's supposed to help you sleep. Sounds weird, right? Well, you're not alone. Millions of people have discovered that this chaotic animated sitcom has become the ultimate sleep aid. And today we're diving deep into the fascinating world of Family Guy sleep culture and uncovering some mind-blowing facts that'll change how you think about this phenomenon forever. Before we get started, let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself drifting off to the sounds of Peter Griffin's ridiculous antics? If so, you're part of a massive community that's turned what was meant to be comedy gold into the perfect bedtime soundtrack. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this works so well and discover some incredible secrets about the show that even die-hard fans don't know. Let's start with the most surprising fact of all. Family Guy wasn't designed to be relaxing, yet it's become one of the most popular sleep aids on the internet. The reason behind this paradox is actually rooted in psychology. Our brains crave familiar patterns when we're trying to wind down. And after more than 2 decades on air, Family Guy has created a predictable rhythm that viewers find comforting. The show's structure follows a specific formula that makes it perfect for background noise. Each episode contains multiple short segments, cutaway gags that last just long enough to capture attention without requiring deep focus, and character voices that remain consistent throughout. This creates what sleep experts call a cognitive lullaby, where your brain can partially engage without becoming overstimulated. But here's where it gets really interesting. The show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, has actually acknowledged this unexpected use of his creation. In interviews, he's mentioned receiving countless messages from fans who use Family Guy episodes to fall asleep. What's fascinating is that this wasn't intentional, but it happened because of specific audio design choices made during production. The audio mixing in Family Guy is deliberately compressed, meaning the difference between the loudest and quietest sounds is minimized. This prevents jarring volume spikes that might wake you up. Unlike many other TV shows where dramatic music or sound effects can suddenly blast through your speakers, the voice acting also maintains a relatively steady pitch and tone, creating a consistent audio environment that's conducive to relaxation. Now let's talk about the science behind why repetitive content helps us sleep. When we watch the same episodes repeatedly, our brains start to predict what's coming next. This predictability reduces anxiety and mental stimulation, allowing our minds to gradually wind down. Family Guy episodes are structured in a way that supports this process, with familiar character, dynamics, and recurring gags that create a sense of security. The phenomenon has grown so large that entire YouTube channels are dedicated to Family Guy sleep compilations. These videos regularly rack up millions of views, with comment sections filled with people sharing their gratitude for finding the perfect sleep content. Some compilations run for 10, 12, even 15 hours, specifically designed to play throughout the entire night without interruption. What makes this even more remarkable is the demographic involved. While Family Guy's primary audience skews toward adults aged 18 to 49, the sleep community spans all age groups. Parents report using these compilations to help their children fall asleep, while elderly viewers have discovered that familiar voices and simple storylines provide comfort during restless nights. The cultural impact of this trend extends beyond just sleep habits. It's created a shared experience among viewers who might never meet but who all understand the comfort of falling asleep to Peter Griffin's voice. Social media groups dedicated to Family Guy sleep content have thousands of members who share their favorite episodes, discuss which seasons work best for sleeping, and even create custom playlists for different moods. But let's dive deeper into what makes Family Guy specifically effective compared to other animated shows. The key lies in its character consistency and emotional tone. Unlike shows with dramatic story arcs or intense emotional moments, Family Guy maintains a relatively flat emotional landscape. Even when conflicts arise, they're typically resolved quickly and without lasting consequences, preventing the kind of narrative tension that might keep your mind active. The show's humor style also plays a crucial role. The comedy is largely observational and referential, rather than building toward major punchlines that require your full attention. This allows viewers to drift in and out of consciousness without feeling like they're missing important plot points or set up payoff sequences that other comedies rely on. Character voice consistency is another crucial factor. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters, including Peter, Brian, and Stewie, creating a unified vocal landscape. His voice acting style maintains consistent energy levels and delivery patterns across different characters, contributing to the overall audio stability that makes the show suitable for sleep. The animation style itself supports the sleep-friendly nature of the content. Family Guy uses bright, primary colors and simple character designs that don't create visual complexity or overstimulation. The backgrounds are typically static, and camera movements are minimal compared to more action-oriented animated series. This visual simplicity prevents the kind of dynamic imagery that might keep viewers visually engaged when they're trying to relax. Research into sleep and media consumption has revealed some fascinating insights about why certain content works better than others for bedtime viewing. Studies show that familiar content reduces cortisol levels, the stress hormone that keeps us alert and awake. When we watch something we've seen before, our brains don't need to work as hard to process new information, allowing other systems to begin the shutdown process necessary for sleep. The episodic nature of Family Guy also supports healthy sleep habits. Unlike serialized dramas that create cliffhangers and emotional investment in ongoing storylines, Family Guy episodes are largely self-contained. This means viewers don't feel compelled to stay awake to find out what happens next, reducing the kind of narrative anxiety that can interfere with sleep onset. Temperature regulation during sleep is crucial, and surprisingly, the content we consume before bed can affect our body's ability to cool down. Family Guy's predictable pacing and familiar content help maintain steady heart rate and breathing patterns, supporting the natural temperature drop that signals our bodies it's time to sleep. The show's approach to conflict resolution also contributes to its sleep-friendly qualities. Most episodes follow a pattern where problems are introduced and resolved within 22 minutes, creating a sense of completion and closure that helps viewers feel satisfied and ready to rest. This is dramatically different from shows that end episodes with unresolved tension or dramatic cliffhangers. Cultural references and pop culture jokes in Family Guy serve an interesting function for sleep viewers. Because many of these references are repeated across multiple episodes and seasons, they create layers of familiarity that deepen over time. Longtime viewers develop an almost subliminal recognition of these patterns, further enhancing the comfort and predictability that supports sleep. The timing of cutaway gags is another element that works in favor of sleep viewers. These brief tangential scenes typically last between 10 to 30 seconds, providing just enough variety to prevent complete monotony while maintaining the overall flow of familiar content. They're short enough that viewers who drift off won't miss significant plot development, but engaging enough to provide gentle mental stimulation for those still partially awake. Voice acting quality and consistency across the series is remarkable when you consider that Family Guy has been in production for over 20 years. The main voice actors have maintained their character voices with impressive consistency, creating an audio signature that remains recognizable and comforting across different seasons and episodes. This vocal stability is crucial for sleep content, as changes in voice quality or delivery style could be jarring enough to wake viewers. The show's musical approach also supports its effectiveness as sleep content. The background music is typically understated and doesn't compete with dialogue for attention. Musical cues are predictable and rarely feature sudden volume changes or jarring instrumental choices that might disrupt the relaxation process. Even the show's musical numbers, while entertaining, follow familiar structures that don't create unexpected audio experiences. Character development in Family Guy follows patterns that support its use as sleep content. Unlike shows where characters undergo significant growth or change, Family Guy characters remain relatively static in their personalities and behaviors. This consistency means viewers always know what to expect from each character, reducing the cognitive load required to follow character arcs or relationship developments. The pacing of dialogue delivery is another crucial element. Family Guy conversations typically maintain steady rhythms without the rapid-fire exchanges or dramatic pauses that characterize other comedy series. This consistent pacing helps maintain the audio environment that many viewers find conducive to sleep, providing gentle stimulation without sudden changes that might increase alertness. Production quality across different seasons has remained remarkably consistent, which is important for viewers who cycle through multiple episodes during sleep sessions. While animation techniques have evolved over the years, the core audio elements that make Family Guy effective for sleep have remained stable throughout the series' run. The global appeal of Family Guy as sleep content transcends cultural boundaries. International viewers report similar experiences with the show's sleep-inducing properties, even when watching dubbed versions in their native languages. This suggests that the fundamental structural elements that make the show effective for sleep are independent of specific cultural references or language-based humor. Streaming platform algorithms have recognized this usage pattern and now actively recommend Family Guy content to viewers who consume other sleep-related media. This has created a feedback loop where the show's sleep community continues to grow as more people discover its effectiveness through algorithmic suggestions. The economic impact of this trend is substantial. Streaming services have reported that Family Guy episodes generate billions of hours of viewing time, with a significant portion of that consumption happening during typical sleep hours. This has influenced licensing decisions and content acquisition strategies across multiple platforms. Medical professionals have begun studying the Family Guy sleep phenomenon as part of broader research into media-assisted sleep techniques. While not officially prescribed as a sleep aid, some sleep specialists acknowledge that for certain individuals, familiar comedic content can be part of a healthy bedtime routine when used appropriately. The community aspect of Family Guy sleep culture has created unique social connections. Online forums feature discussions about optimal episode selections, volume levels, and viewing setups specifically designed for sleep use. These communities provide support and advice for people struggling with insomnia or other sleep difficulties. Production decisions made decades ago continue to influence the show's effectiveness as sleep content today. Early episodes featured simpler audio mixing and more straightforward storylines that many sleep viewers prefer. This has led to interesting discussions about which seasons and episodes work best for different types of sleep needs. The psychological comfort provided by Family Guy's dysfunctional but ultimately loving family dynamic resonates with viewers seeking emotional stability before sleep. Despite the characters' many flaws and conflicts, the show consistently reinforces themes of family loyalty and unconditional acceptance that can provide emotional security during vulnerable sleep periods. As we wrap up this exploration of Family Guy's unexpected role as the internet's favorite sleep aid, it's clear that this phenomenon represents something much larger than just a quirky viewing habit. It demonstrates how content creators can accidentally tap into deep psychological needs, how communities form around shared experiences, and how familiar media can provide comfort in our increasingly chaotic world. Whether you're a longtime member of the Family Guy sleep community or someone who's never considered using animated sitcoms as a relaxation tool, this trend offers fascinating insights into human psychology, media consumption, and the unexpected ways we find peace in our daily lives. The next time you're struggling to fall asleep, you might want to give those Family Guy compilations a try. You'll be joining millions of viewers who have discovered that sometimes the best lullaby comes from the most unexpected source, and you might just find yourself sleeping better than you have in years.
Have you ever wondered what secrets lurk behind one of television's most controversial animated series? Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, hilarious, and sometimes shocking world of Family Guy, with facts so fascinating they might just help you drift off to sleep. But trust me, you'll want to stay awake for these incredible revelations about Seth MacFarlane's groundbreaking creation. Picture this. It's 1999, and a young animator named Seth MacFarlane is sitting in his tiny apartment, sketching out what would become one of the most polarizing shows in television history. Little did he know that his crude drawings of a dysfunctional Rhode Island family would spawn over 2 decades of entertainment, controversy, and cultural impact that continues to this day. Family Guy didn't just stumble into existence by accident. The show's origin story is actually rooted in McFarlane's college thesis project at the Rhode Island School of Design. Back in 1995, he created a short film called The Life of Larry, featuring a middle-aged man named Larry and his talking dog. This 9-minute animated short caught the attention of television executives and eventually evolved into the Family Guy we know today. What's remarkable is that many of the core elements from that original student film made it directly into the series, proving that sometimes the best ideas come from the most unexpected places. The casting process for Family Guy reveals some truly surprising facts that most fans never discover. Seth MacFarlane himself voices not just one, but 4 major characters in the show. He's the voice behind Peter Griffin, Brian the dog, Stewie Griffin, and Glenn Quagmire. What's even more impressive is that MacFarlane can seamlessly switch between these vastly different vocal personalities during recording sessions, often having entire conversations with himself as different characters. The other voice actors frequently joke that they feel like they're working with a one-man show, since MacFarlane essentially carries the comedic weight of multiple personalities. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois Griffin, actually wasn't the original choice for the character. The role was initially offered to Lacey Chabert, who you might recognize from Mean Girls and Party of Five. Chabert did voice Meg Griffin in the early seasons, but scheduling conflicts led to her departure, and Mila Kunis stepped in to take over. Meanwhile, Borstein had been working as a writer and consultant on the show before landing the role of Lois, making her transition to voice acting feel completely natural. The show's animation style might look simple, but there's incredible complexity hidden beneath those seemingly basic character designs. Each episode of Family Guy requires approximately 8 months to complete from initial script to final broadcast. The animation process involves hundreds of artists, animators, and technicians working across multiple studios. What's particularly fascinating is that the show uses a hybrid approach, combining traditional hand-drawn animation with computer-generated elements. Those elaborate fight scenes and musical numbers that fans love so much often require specialized animation techniques that push the boundaries of television production budgets. Speaking of production, Family Guy has one of the most unusual writing rooms in television. The writer's room operates more like a comedy club than a traditional television writing environment. Writers are encouraged to pitch their wildest, most outrageous ideas without any filters. Many of the show's most memorable cutaway gags actually come from spontaneous brainstorming sessions where writers try to one-up each other with increasingly absurd scenarios. The famous "Bird is the Word" episode, for example, originated from a writer casually mentioning the old Trashmen song, which then spiraled into an entire episode concept within hours. The show's relationship with censorship and network standards has created some legendary behind-the-scenes stories. During its early years on Fox, Family Guy constantly pushed against network restrictions, leading to numerous battles over content. Some episodes were heavily edited or had entire segments removed before airing. Interestingly, when the show moved to Adult Swim and later back to Fox with renewed popularity, many of these previously censored segments were restored in DVD releases and streaming versions, giving fans access to the creator's original, uncensored vision. Family Guy's cancellation and resurrection story reads like something out of a Hollywood fairy tale. After 3 seasons, Fox canceled the show in 2002 due to declining ratings. However, something unprecedented happened. DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns created a massive surge in popularity. Fans organized campaigns, online petitions gained hundreds of thousands of signatures, and merchandise sales skyrocketed. This grassroots movement convinced Fox to revive the series in 2005, making Family Guy one of the first shows in television history to be brought back to life primarily due to fan demand and home video success. The show's cultural impact extends far beyond television screens. Family Guy has influenced internet culture in ways that most people don't realize. Many popular memes and viral video formats can trace their origins back to Family Guy episodes. The show's cutaway gag structure has become a template for online content creators, and phrases like "freakin' sweet" and "giggity giggity" have entered everyday vocabulary. Social media platforms are filled with Family Guy reaction GIFs and quotes, demonstrating the show's lasting influence on digital communication. Seth MacFarlane's musical background plays a crucial role in Family Guy's identity that often goes unnoticed. MacFarlane is an accomplished jazz singer and pianist who has released several albums and performed with major orchestras. This musical talent directly influences the show's frequent musical numbers and elaborate song and dance sequences. When characters break into song, MacFarlane often personally composes the music and provides vocal arrangements. Some of the show's most memorable moments, like Stewie and Brian's road trip songs or Peter's various musical adventures, showcase MacFarlane's genuine musical abilities rather than just comedy writing. The voice recording process for Family Guy involves some truly unique techniques that create the show's distinctive sound. Unlike many animated series where actors record their lines separately, Family Guy often brings the core cast together for group recording sessions. This allows for more natural interactions and improvised moments between characters. Seth Green, who voices Chris Griffin, frequently ad-libs during these sessions, leading to some of the characters' most endearing moments. The chemistry between voice actors during these collaborative recording sessions contributes significantly to the family dynamic that makes the show feel authentic despite its outrageous scenarios. Family Guy's international variations reveal fascinating cultural adaptations that most American viewers never see. Different countries have created their own localized versions of certain episodes, replacing American pop culture references with local celebrities and cultural touchstones. The show airs in over 50 countries, and each region has unique censorship requirements that lead to different editing approaches. Some countries focus heavily on removing violence while allowing sexual content, while others take the opposite approach. These international versions sometimes create entirely different comedic rhythms and viewing experiences. The show's relationship with guest stars has produced some incredible behind-the-scenes stories. Many celebrities who appear on Family Guy are longtime fans who specifically request to be part of episodes. Conway Twitty, whose music videos frequently interrupt episodes as random cutaway gags, became a running joke specifically because MacFarlane and the writers found his earnest country music performances hilariously incongruous with the show's irreverent tone. Some guest stars have recorded multiple episodes worth of material during single recording sessions, allowing the show to feature their characters across multiple seasons. Family Guy's approach to controversial topics has created a unique position in television comedy. The show operates under what writers call the equal opportunity offense philosophy, meaning that no topic, group, or individual is considered off-limits for comedic treatment. This approach has generated both criticism and praise from various quarters, but it has also allowed the show to address social issues in ways that more conventional programming cannot. Episodes dealing with topics like religion, politics, and social justice often use humor as a vehicle for presenting multiple perspectives on complex issues. The technical aspects of Family Guy's production reveal impressive attention to detail that viewers might not notice. The show's color palette has evolved significantly over its run, with newer episodes featuring more sophisticated lighting and shading techniques. Background artists create incredibly detailed environments that often include visual jokes and Easter eggs that reward careful viewers. The Drunken Clam, the Griffin House, and other recurring locations contain hundreds of small details that remain consistent across episodes, creating a lived-in feel that supports the show's fictional world. Family Guy's impact on other animated series cannot be overstated. The show's success paved the way for adult-oriented animated comedies like American Dad, The Cleveland Show, and Rick and Morty. Its influence on writing style, particularly the use of non-sequitur cutaway gags and pop culture references, has become a standard template for animated comedy. Many current animated series creators cite Family Guy as a direct influence on their own work, demonstrating its lasting impact on the medium. The show's merchandise empire extends into surprisingly diverse areas. Beyond typical television show merchandise like t-shirts and toys, Family Guy has inspired everything from mobile apps to theme park attractions. The show's characters appear on products ranging from breakfast cereals to automobile accessories. This merchandising success has contributed significantly to the show's financial viability and cultural presence, making Family Guy characters recognizable, even to people who don't regularly watch the series. Family Guy's writing team includes some of television's most talented comedy writers, many of whom have gone on to create their own successful series. The show serves as a training ground for comedy writers, providing them with experience in rapid-fire joke writing, character development, and serialized storytelling. Alumni of the Family Guy writing staff have contributed to shows like The Simpsons, South Park, and Saturday Night Live, spreading the show's comedic influence throughout the industry. The show's approach to character development over multiple seasons reveals sophisticated long-term storytelling strategies. While Family Guy is known for its episodic nature and reset-button storytelling, careful viewers can trace character evolution across seasons. Stewie's gradual shift from world domination fantasies to more nuanced character interactions, Brian's ongoing struggles with alcoholism and romantic relationships, and Peter's various career changes all represent subtle character development that occurs alongside the show's more obvious comedic elements. Family Guy's relationship with current events and topical humor requires incredibly fast production turnarounds that most viewers don't appreciate. The show's writers and animators often work under extreme time pressure to incorporate recent news events and pop culture phenomena into episodes. This rapid response capability has allowed Family Guy to remain culturally relevant across multiple decades, but it also creates significant production challenges that require careful coordination between writing, animation, and broadcast scheduling. The show's musical parodies and elaborate musical sequences often involve complex licensing negotiations and legal considerations. When Family Guy parodies specific songs or musical styles, the production team must navigate copyright laws while creating content that's clearly transformative enough to qualify for fair use protection. Some of the show's most memorable musical moments required months of legal work behind the scenes, demonstrating the complexity involved in creating seemingly simple comedic content. Family Guy's impact on voice acting as a profession has been substantial and lasting. The show's success has elevated voice acting from a relatively niche specialty to a more mainstream entertainment career path. Seth MacFarlane's multiple voice roles have inspired other actors to develop versatile vocal capabilities, and the show's ensemble cast approach has become a model for other animated series. Voice acting workshops and training programs now regularly reference Family Guy techniques and approaches. The show's digital presence and streaming availability have introduced Family Guy to entirely new generations of viewers who experience the series differently than original broadcast audiences. Binge-watching capabilities allow viewers to notice long-term character arcs and recurring jokes that might be missed during weekly viewing. Streaming platforms have also made international versions and extended cuts available to broader audiences, creating new ways to experience familiar content. Family Guy's influence on comedy writing extends beyond animation into live-action television and film. The show's rapid-fire reference style and willingness to break the fourth wall have influenced writers across multiple mediums. Comedy Central roasts, Saturday Night Live sketches, and even stand-up comedy routines now regularly employ techniques that were pioneered or popularized by Family Guy writers. The show's approach to holiday episodes and special events demonstrates sophisticated audience engagement strategies. Family Guy's Christmas, Halloween, and other holiday episodes often feature elaborate production values and guest stars, creating appointment television that generates significant viewer loyalty. These special episodes frequently become fan favorites that get rewatched annually, contributing to the show's lasting cultural presence. As we reach the end of our journey through these fascinating Family Guy facts, it's clear that this seemingly simple animated series contains layers of complexity, creativity, and cultural influence that most viewers never fully appreciate. From Seth MacFarlane's one-man vocal circus to the show's groundbreaking approach to adult animation, Family Guy has carved out a unique space in television history that continues to evolve and surprise audiences. Whether you're a longtime fan or someone just discovering the series, these behind-the-scenes insights reveal the incredible amount of talent, dedication, and creative risk-taking that goes into every episode. The show's ability to remain relevant and controversial after more than 2 decades speaks to its creators' understanding of comedy, culture, and the ever-changing landscape of entertainment. So the next time you're settling in for a Family Guy marathon, remember that you're not just watching a cartoon about a dysfunctional family in Rhode Island. You're experiencing the result of thousands of hours of creative work by some of the most talented people in entertainment, all coming together to create something that's simultaneously ridiculous and profound, offensive and heartwarming, simple and incredibly sophisticated. Sweet dreams. And remember, somewhere out there, Seth MacFarlane is probably already working on the next episode that will surprise, delight, and possibly outrage audiences all over again. That's the magic of Family Guy. And that's what makes it truly special in the vast landscape of television entertainment. Picture this. You're lying in bed, phone in hand, ready to drift off to the soothing sound of random Family Guy trivia. Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because tonight we're diving deep into the most bizarre, shocking, and downright disturbing moments that have happened to every single character in Quahog. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at your favorite dysfunctional cartoon family the same way again. Now, before we start this journey through animated trauma, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if the worst day of your life was broadcast on national television for millions to laugh at? Well, that's basically every episode of Family Guy for these poor fictional souls. So grab your favorite pillow, get comfortable, and let's explore the darkest corners of Seth MacFarlane's twisted imagination. Starting alphabetically with Adam West, because why not begin with a mayor who's nuttier than a fruitcake? This eccentric political figure finally found his soulmate when he married Carol, Lois's sister. For a guy who regularly talks to his own hand and thinks cardboard cutouts are real people, finding true love seemed like a miracle. The wedding was beautiful, the honeymoon was passionate, and for once in his bizarre life, Adam West looked genuinely happy. But happiness in Family Guy is like a snowball in hell. It melts faster than you can say cutaway gag. Carol decided that one mayor wasn't enough for her appetite, so she started having an affair with another man. When Adam discovered this betrayal, instead of walking away with his dignity intact, he challenged the other guy to a duel. Because nothing says rational response like pistols at dawn, right? The worst part wasn't just the cheating. It was watching this lonely, eccentric man desperately fight for someone who clearly didn't deserve his devotion. Carol promised it would never happen again, but we all knew that was complete garbage. Adam deserved so much better than a woman who treated his heart like a revolving door. Moving on to Angela, Peter's former boss at the toy company. Unlike most characters who simply disappear without explanation, Angela got a proper send-off that hit viewers right in the feels. When voice actress Carrie Fisher passed away in real life, the show made the touching decision to address it directly in the series. According to Peter's explanation, Angela died doing what she loved, which was apparently swimming less than 20 minutes after eating. Now, we all know that's an old wives' tale about getting cramps, but in the Family Guy universe, it was enough to send this strong, independent businesswoman to her watery grave. It's both absurd and oddly respectful, which perfectly captures the show's ability to blend humor with genuine emotion. Barbara Pewterschmidt, or Babs as she's known to friends, has endured decades of her husband Carter's wandering eye. This woman has put up with more infidelity than a reality TV show contestant, and somehow she keeps forgiving him. The breaking point came when Peter caught Carter in bed with yet another woman, and after some classic Griffin family blackmail shenanigans, the secret inevitably came out. Picture the devastation on Babs's face when she realized that everyone knew about her husband's latest affair before she did. The humiliation of being the last to know, the embarrassment of having your private pain become public gossip. It's enough to break anyone's spirit. She kicked his crusty behind out of the house and tried to start fresh, but love makes fools of us all. And she eventually took him back. The irony is that Babs isn't exactly innocent herself. She's had her own affairs over the years, including that memorable encounter with Jackie Gleason. But there's something particularly cruel about Carter's public humiliation of his wife that makes this betrayal sting more than the others. Bonnie Swanson represents the dark side of suburban marriage. When she's not cheating on her paralyzed husband, she's literally trying to murder him with ground glass in his food, or buying rickety houses hoping they'll collapse on him. But karma has a way of coming full circle, and Bonnie got a taste of her own medicine in the most humiliating way possible. During their daughter's birthday party, with friends and family gathered around, Bonnie overheard Joe having an affair with a colleague through the baby monitor. Imagine the mortification of discovering your spouse's betrayal while surrounded by people who are supposed to be celebrating your family. The timing couldn't have been worse, and the method of discovery was like something out of a soap opera nightmare. The fact that this happened during what should have been a joyous occasion for their child makes it even more devastating. Bonnie may be a serial cheater herself, but nobody deserves to have their private pain exposed in such a public and humiliating way. Now let's talk about Brian Griffin, the philosophical dog with more emotional baggage than a therapy convention. Poor Brian has endured countless injuries over the years, from losing his teeth in a fight with Peter to getting his face smashed by a fire hydrant. But the absolute worst thing that happened to him was his temporary death in season 12. Getting hit by that car and actually dying, even if it was only for 2 episodes, represents the ultimate trauma for any character. Death is supposed to be permanent, final, the end of all stories. For Brian to experience that ultimate fear and then somehow return to life, the psychological impact must have been enormous. Think about it from his perspective. One moment he's crossing the street, the next he's presumably facing whatever comes after life. Then suddenly he's back, but with the knowledge that death is real, permanent, and can happen at any moment. That kind of existential trauma would mess with anyone's head, even a talking dog who writes pretentious novels. Bruce's story is one of love, acceptance, and heartbreaking loss. After years of hiding his true self, he finally came out, married his longtime partner Jeffrey, and even had a baby through surrogacy. For the first time in his life, Bruce was living authentically, openly, and happily. He had everything he'd ever wanted: a husband, a child, and the freedom to be himself without shame or fear. But Family Guy has never been kind to happiness, and during what should have been a perfect vacation in Bermuda, tragedy struck in the most brutal way imaginable. Jeffrey's hat fell into the water, and being the loving husband he was, he jumped in to retrieve it. That simple act of devotion cost him his life when a shark attacked and killed him in front of Bruce's horrified eyes. The imagery of watching Jeffrey get torn apart by a predator, followed by the soul-crushing sight of 2 coffins being loaded onto the plane, represents a level of trauma that goes beyond physical pain. Bruce had to watch his dreams of a perfect life literally get devoured before his eyes. Carter Pewterschmidt is arguably one of the most evil characters on the show. This billionaire has hidden cancer cures for profit, destroyed countless lives for money, and shown no remorse for any of his actions. But karma caught up with him in the most ironic way possible when Lois accidentally shot him in the head. The bullet caused severe brain damage that completely changed Carter's personality. Suddenly, this cruel capitalist became kind, generous, and caring. He wanted to give away all his money to charity and live a life of compassion instead of greed. For the first time ever, Carter was actually happy and at peace with himself. But Barbara couldn't stand the thought of losing their fortune, so she shot him in the head again, reversing the brain damage and bringing back the cruel version of her husband. The tragedy isn't just that Carter got shot twice by his own family. It's that he briefly experienced what it felt like to be a good person, only to have that stolen away from him. Chris Griffin's worst moment doesn't involve getting turned into sausage or any of the other bizarre things that happen to him regularly. No. His darkest hour came when the Griffin house caught fire and Herbert the creepy neighbor rushed in to supposedly save him. For a brief moment, it looked like Herbert might actually be a hero, but instead of carrying Chris to safety, he took him straight back to his own house. The most disturbing part wasn't even Herbert's actions. It was his family's complete lack of concern. When they discovered what happened, their reaction was basically that Herbert had earned the right to kidnap Chris. The casual acceptance of what was clearly an inappropriate situation shows just how little Chris's family actually cares about his well-being. Cleveland Brown has endured countless humiliations over the years, from his bathtub crashing through his house repeatedly to various other physical mishaps. But the absolute worst thing that happened to him was being betrayed by one of his closest friends in the most heinous way imaginable. Joe Swanson tricked Cleveland into going to what he thought was a vacation in Florida, but was actually a retirement home run by seniors who harvest organs from unsuspecting victims. Joe wanted Peter's legs for himself, but when that plan fell through, he sent Cleveland as a substitute without warning him about the danger. Imagine discovering that someone you trusted with your life had essentially sold you out to organ harvesters. Cleveland literally lost his legs because Joe was too selfish to give up his twisted scheme. The betrayal cuts deeper than any physical wound because it came from someone he considered family. The mystery of Cleveland Jr. represents one of the show's darkest unsolved cases. The original Cleveland Jr. was energetic, slim, and full of life. But suddenly, without explanation, he was replaced by a completely different person who was overweight, slow, and bore no resemblance to the original character. The official explanation is that the original was replaced by a secret agent, but what actually happened to the real Cleveland Jr. remains unknown. The implications are terrifying. Is he dead? Is he being held captive somewhere? Has he been brainwashed? The uncertainty is almost worse than knowing the truth would be. This represents every parent's worst nightmare, having their child disappear and replaced by an imposter while everyone else pretends nothing happened. Cleveland doesn't even seem to notice or care that his son is completely different, which adds another layer of tragedy to the situation. Consuela works harder than anyone else in Quahog, fighting for her fellow maids while cleaning houses for multiple families and even Superman. But her dedication to helping others led her to work for James Woods, a decision she would come to regret in the most horrific way possible. In one of the show's darkest moments, Consuela revealed that Woods had assaulted her nephew, who later took his own life as a result of the trauma. This single line of dialogue carries more weight than entire episodes of physical comedy. It's a reminder that behind the jokes and gags, these characters have real pain and real trauma. The fact that Consuela continued working and fighting for others despite carrying this enormous burden speaks to her incredible strength. But nobody should have to endure such a devastating loss, especially when it could have been prevented. Death himself, the actual Grim Reaper, experienced his own form of mortality when he twisted his ankle while chasing Peter. Suddenly, the being responsible for all death on Earth was sidelined by a simple injury. Without Death able to do his job, chaos erupted as accidents piled up with no consequences. Being forced to hand over his powers to Peter Griffin, of all people, must have been absolutely humiliating for such a powerful entity. Imagine being rendered helpless by something as mundane as a twisted ankle when you're supposed to be one of the most feared forces in the universe. The irony of Death being unable to die from his own injury while watching Peter bungle the most important job in existence must have been torture. Sometimes the worst pain isn't physical. It's watching someone else destroy everything you've worked for. Diane Simmons's downfall began when she discovered she was being replaced by a younger news anchor. After dedicating her life to journalism, the industry she loved was throwing her away like yesterday's newspaper. The rejection and humiliation drove her to madness, leading to a killing spree at James Woods' mansion party. Her plan to frame Tom Tucker and reclaim her career was as desperate as it was violent. But when it all fell apart and she was about to kill Lois, Stewie ended her reign of terror with a single shot. Going from respected journalist to murderous villain to corpse in a matter of hours represents a complete life collapse that few characters have experienced. Dr. Hartman's medical incompetence is legendary, but the one time he actually did his job correctly, it ruined his career. During a routine prostate exam on Peter, he performed the procedure exactly as he was supposed to, but Peter's ignorance and embarrassment led to false assault charges that cost Hartman his medical license. The injustice of losing his livelihood for doing his job properly must have been devastating for someone who, despite his flaws, genuinely wants to help people. Being dragged through court and having his reputation destroyed over a misunderstanding shows how quickly a life can be ruined by ignorance and fear. When Peter later needed the same procedure and had to crawl back to the doctor he destroyed, the humiliation was complete. Hartman eventually got his license back, but the damage to his reputation and the trauma of the legal battle left permanent scars. Ernie the giant chicken has survived countless brutal fights with Peter over the years, but his battle with Meg might have been his last. When Meg moved in with her boyfriend's family and Ernie insulted Peter, she stood up for her father in the most violent way possible. Despite all the abuse Peter has heaped on her over the years, Meg's loyalty to her family ran deep enough that she couldn't stand hearing someone else trash-talk him. Her brutal decapitation of Ernie was both shocking and oddly touching, showing that family bonds can survive even the worst treatment. The sight of Ernie's headless body running around in front of his horrified family was disturbing, even by Family Guy standards. The fact that we didn't get the usual close-up of his eyes suggests this might have been his final defeat, making Meg the one person who could do what Peter never could. The evil monkey's story is actually quite sad when you think about it. For years he terrorized Chris by angrily pointing at him from the closet, but it turns out he was just too shy to start a conversation. All that time, he wasn't evil at all, just socially awkward and misunderstood. But before this revelation, the poor monkey was beaten up by Brian's son Dylan. Being attacked by someone when you're already struggling with social anxiety and communication issues must have been incredibly traumatic. The monkey was already isolated and afraid, and the violence only made things worse. Glenn Quagmire's entire identity revolves around his sexual prowess and his most prized anatomical feature. So when a shark bit off his manhood during a skiing trip, it represented the ultimate nightmare for someone whose whole personality is built around sexual conquest. Watching Quagmire become a shell of himself, miserable and lost without the one thing that defined him, was both comedic and genuinely sad. His entire sense of self-worth was tied to something that could be taken away in an instant, showing how fragile our identities really are. The solution, getting Ida's old equipment with a huge mole on it, was both generous and awkward. Having to explain to potential partners that you're using your father's former anatomy would be enough to give anyone performance anxiety for life. The greased-up deaf guy remained a mystery for years, slipping away from every attempt to catch him while spouting his signature catchphrase. But his origin story revealed a tragic accident that changed him from an ordinary businessman into the greasy enigma we know today. Getting caught in a grease truck explosion severe enough to cause deafness and require constant lubrication to survive sounds absolutely horrifying. Imagine going from a normal life to being a permanently slippery outcast who can't hear and can barely communicate with others. The transformation from respected professional to neighborhood oddity represents a complete loss of identity and social connection. He went from being someone people respected to someone they actively tried to avoid or capture. Herbert's backstory adds a dark historical element to his character. As a World War II pilot who was shot down and sent to a concentration camp, he experienced some of humanity's darkest hours. Being forced to do degrading work like sorting recyclables while imprisoned shows how war can strip away dignity and humanity. The fact that he describes the sticky trash as the worst part, while clearly downplaying much more serious trauma, suggests a coping mechanism of focusing on minor irritations to avoid confronting deeper pain. His current inappropriate behavior toward Chris might stem from the psychological damage of his wartime experiences. Ida's journey represents the struggle of living authentically while facing rejection from those you love most. When she came out as transgender to her son Quagmire, instead of receiving support, she was shunned and rejected. Being abandoned by your own child for being true to yourself is one of the cruelest forms of emotional pain. Even after Quagmire eventually accepted her, he later forced her to choose between him and her relationship with Brian. Making someone pick between their child and their chance at happiness is pure selfishness, especially after she had already made the generous gesture of giving him her former anatomy. Joe Swanson's transformation from paraplegic to quadriplegic during a bull run represents every disabled person's worst fear, losing even more independence and control over their life. Being paralyzed from the neck down instead of just the waist changed everything for him. The abandonment that followed was even worse than the physical trauma. His wife Bonnie immediately left him for Europe, claiming she didn't sign up for this level of care. His friends tried to help, but eventually dumped him in a terrible state facility when it became too much work. Being betrayed by both your spouse and your closest friends when you need them most is a special kind of hell. Joe eventually regained some function, but the emotional scars of abandonment would last forever. Jerome carries the heaviest emotional burden of any character on the show. Losing his wife to cancer just 1 week after their wedding, followed by his daughter's death from pneumonia 6 weeks later, represents a level of tragedy that transcends comedy. Even in a cartoon universe where death and destruction happen regularly, Jerome's story stands out as genuinely heartbreaking. The timing of these losses, coming right after what should have been the happiest moments of his life, makes the tragedy even more poignant. Jillian's happiness was shattered when Diane Simmons murdered her husband Derek during her killing spree. After being jerked around by Brian and finally finding a good man to marry, having that torn away by random violence must have been devastating. The look of absolute devastation on her face when she realized her husband was dead spoke volumes about the depth of her loss. Going from newlywed bliss to widow in a matter of moments represents the kind of trauma that changes someone forever. The Kool-Aid Man, despite being a corporate mascot, became a victim of Stewie's evil twin in one of the show's more surreal moments. Having your glass body smashed and your contents consumed by a psychotic baby represents a uniquely cartoonish form of murder. The fact that he returned later suggests some form of immortality, but the experience of being destroyed and consumed must have been traumatic even for a sentient beverage container. Lois Griffin has endured tremendous physical and emotional trauma over the years. While getting killed by Stewie in a simulation doesn't count as real, her other experiences are genuinely horrific. Getting boiling oil thrown on her by Peter left her with severe burns covering her entire body, but arguably worse was the mental trauma of watching Peter perform oral acts on her sick mother due to a hypnotherapy mishap. Physical burns heal, but that mental image would haunt her forever. The violation of boundaries and the grotesque nature of the incident make it worse than any physical injury. Loretta Brown's death was both tragic and disturbing. Falling to her death when Peter destroyed her house was bad enough, but Quagmire's necrophilic intentions afterward added another layer of horror to her fate. Being killed by your ex-husband's friend's stupidity and then having your corpse violated represents a complete denial of dignity, even in death. The fact that this was played for laughs makes it even more disturbing. Meg Griffin has endured so much abuse that choosing just one worst moment seems impossible. She's been shot, stabbed, humiliated, and ignored by her family for years. But losing her arms and legs while becoming deaf, dumb, and blind represents the ultimate disability nightmare. Being completely helpless and unable to communicate or care for yourself while still being conscious and aware would be torture beyond imagination. The combination of physical disability and sensory deprivation creates a prison worse than any jail cell. Mort Goldman's loss of his wife Muriel was made even more tragic by his inability to think of anything positive to say about their marriage. After decades together, being unable to recall a single happy memory suggests a relationship built on obligation rather than love. The fact that she died violently during Diane's killing spree adds sudden trauma to what might have otherwise been a natural parting. Having your spouse murdered while you're realizing your marriage was empty creates a complex grief that would be hard to process. Neil Goldman's humiliation when Meg kissed him during a crisis was compounded by his own poor judgment in broadcasting the moment publicly. Instead of treasuring a private moment, he turned it into a public spectacle that embarrassed them both. His subsequent suicide attempt showed how deeply the rejection affected him, but his actions had already ruined any chance he might have had with Meg. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are consequences of our own poor choices. Peter Griffin has caused enormous destruction throughout the series, but he's also been on the receiving end of significant trauma. Learning that his father figure wasn't his biological father created an identity crisis that shook his understanding of who he was. The existential pain of questioning your entire life story and family history cuts deeper than any physical injury. Peter's struggle to understand his place in the world after this revelation showed a vulnerability that's rare for his character. Seamus represents the ultimate survivor, having lost most of his body parts to various predators over the years. Whether it was James Woods, sharks, or other creatures, the systematic loss of limbs and organs while somehow remaining alive and conscious is a nightmare beyond comprehension. The fact that his origin story keeps changing suggests that the trauma was so severe he can't even remember it clearly. Living as mostly wood and prosthetics while maintaining consciousness would be a constant reminder of everything he's lost. Stewie Griffin has endured incredible trauma for a 1-year-old baby. From dingo attacks to being fused with his teddy bear, his young life has been filled with horror. But the worst incident was when he split his head open falling downstairs, and his family refused to get him medical attention. Instead of rushing him to the hospital, they tried to cover up the injury and hide the evidence. Watching a raccoon gnaw on his exposed brain, while his family worried more about getting in trouble than his health, shows a level of neglect that borders on criminal. The fact that he spent months in a coma while they continued to prioritize their own convenience over his life demonstrates how little they truly care about him despite their occasional shows of affection. Tom Tucker's identity crisis when he faced replacement by a younger anchor led to a complete career meltdown. Following Peter's advice to get tattoos live on air was the final nail in his professional coffin, destroying everything he'd worked for his entire life. Being fired from the job that defined him and then nearly committing suicide over the loss shows how completely his sense of self was tied to his career. The humiliation of having his replacement want to interview him before his suicide attempt added insult to injury. Trisha Takanawa's fate during the Y2K Apocalypse episode, becoming a victim of cannibalism, represents the ultimate objectification. Being reduced to literal food for other people strips away every aspect of humanity and dignity. Even in a post-apocalyptic setting, the casual way her consumption was discussed shows how completely society had broken down and how little value was placed on individual human life. Each of these characters has faced their own unique form of suffering, from physical trauma to emotional devastation to existential crisis. What makes these moments particularly impactful is how they contrast with the show's usual comedic tone. When Family Guy decides to get dark, it doesn't hold back. These aren't just random gags or throwaway jokes. They're genuine character moments that reveal the psychological depth hiding beneath the surface humor. The fact that these characters continue to function and interact normally after experiencing such trauma speaks to both human resilience and the show's commitment to treating serious subjects with the same casual attitude as everything else. Understanding these worst moments helps us appreciate the full scope of what these characters have endured. It's easy to laugh at their misfortunes when they're presented as comedy, but examining them seriously reveals a tapestry of human suffering that would challenge anyone's sanity. The genius of Family Guy lies in its ability to make us laugh at things that would horrify us in real life. By presenting extreme trauma in a comedic context, the show allows us to process difficult emotions and experiences in a safe environment. These characters serve as vessels for our own fears and anxieties, experiencing the worst possible outcomes so we don't have to. Their resilience in the face of unimaginable suffering provides a strange form of comfort and inspiration. Whether it's betrayal by loved ones, physical mutilation, loss of identity, or complete abandonment, every character has faced their ultimate nightmare and somehow survived to appear in the next episode. The cyclical nature of their suffering, where trauma is quickly forgotten and life returns to normal, reflects how we often deal with our own pain by compartmentalizing and moving forward rather than dwelling on past hurts. But tonight, as you drift off to sleep, you can take comfort in knowing that no matter how bad your day was, at least you're not a Family Guy character. At least you don't have to worry about your house being destroyed by a giant chicken, your spouse cheating with your neighbor, or your family refusing to take you to the hospital when your brain is exposed. Sweet dreams, and remember that in the morning, you'll wake up in a world that's probably a little less chaotic than Quahog, Rhode Island. Though given the state of things these days, that might not be as comforting as it used to be. But hey, that's a worry for tomorrow. Tonight, just let the absurd suffering of animated characters lull you into peaceful slumber, secure in the knowledge that your problems are probably more manageable than theirs. Sleep tight, and don't let the evil monkeys point at you from the closet. Have you ever wondered what goes on behind the scenes of your favorite animated comedy? Tonight, we're diving deep into the wild world of Family Guy with facts so fascinating they might just lull you into the most entertaining sleep of your life. From secret voice acting techniques to hidden Easter eggs that took fans decades to discover, these are the Family Guy facts that will blow your mind. Picture this. It's 1999, and a young animator named Seth MacFarlane is sitting in a cramped office, sketching what would become one of television's most controversial and beloved families. Little did he know that his creation would survive cancellation twice, spark international debates, and become a cultural phenomenon that would define comedy for generations. But here's the thing. The story of Family Guy is far more incredible than anything Peter Griffin could ever dream up. Let's start with something that will immediately grab your attention. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice by Fox? The first cancellation happened in 2002 after just 3 seasons. Network executives thought the show was too edgy, too controversial, and frankly, too weird for mainstream television. They were wrong, dead wrong. The show's popularity on Adult Swim and DVD sales were so massive that Fox had no choice but to bring it back in 2005. Then, believe it or not, they canceled it again in 2007. But once again, fan outcry and incredible ratings forced the network to reverse their decision. This makes Family Guy one of the only shows in television history to be resurrected twice by pure fan power. Here's where things get really interesting. Seth MacFarlane, the creative genius behind the show, almost wasn't around to see his creation succeed. On September 11, 2001, MacFarlane was supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11. Yes, that Flight 11. He was scheduled to fly from Boston to Los Angeles that morning, but a combination of a hangover and his travel agent giving him the wrong departure time caused him to miss the flight by just 10 minutes. That flight crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. If not for that hangover and scheduling mix-up, there might never have been a Family Guy renaissance, no American Dad, no The Orville. The entire landscape of modern animation could have been completely different. Now, let's talk about voices, because this is where Family Guy becomes absolutely mind-blowing. Seth MacFarlane doesn't just create the show. He voices Peter Griffin, Brian Griffin, Stewie Griffin, Glenn Quagmire, Tom Tucker, and Carter Pewter Schmidt. That's 6 major characters, each with completely distinct personalities and vocal patterns. But here's the kicker. He does all of these voices live, in real time, often switching between characters mid-sentence during recording sessions. The other voice actors have described watching MacFarlane work as like witnessing someone with multiple personality disorder, except it's all controlled and brilliant. Speaking of Stewie, let's address the elephant in the room. For years, fans debated whether Stewie was gay, straight, or something else entirely. Seth MacFarlane finally settled this debate in a way that's both hilarious and profound. According to McFarlane, Stewie's sexuality is intentionally fluid and undefined because he's a baby. Babies don't have developed sexual identities. The joke isn't about his orientation. It's about the absurdity of a 1-year-old having any romantic inclinations at all. This clever writing choice allows the character to be whatever the story needs him to be, making him one of the most versatile characters in television comedy. Here's a fact that will make you appreciate the show's attention to detail. Every single cutaway gag in Family Guy is hand-drawn and animated, even the ones that last only 3 seconds. The animation team creates full character models, backgrounds, and even choreography for jokes that might get a 2-second laugh. This dedication to craft is why Family Guy's visual comedy feels so rich and detailed compared to other animated shows that rely on cheaper animation shortcuts. The show's controversial reputation isn't accidental. It's carefully calculated. Seth MacFarlane has revealed that many of the most outrageous jokes are specifically designed to distract from the show's more subtle social commentary. While audiences are debating whether a particular gag went too far, they're absorbing deeper messages about American culture, politics, and society. It's comedy as intellectual sleight of hand, and it works brilliantly. Let's dive into some character origins that will surprise you. Brian Griffin, the intellectual family dog, was originally going to be just a regular pet with no speaking lines. MacFarlane added Brian's voice and personality during the pilot episode because he felt the family needed a voice of reason, someone who could call out Peter's ridiculous behavior while still being part of the family dynamic. The character became so integral that many episodes are built entirely around Brian's storylines. Here's something that might change how you watch the show forever. The Griffin family's house layout has been deliberately inconsistent throughout the series. Sometimes there are different numbers of rooms, staircases appear and disappear, and the kitchen changes size depending on what the scene requires. This isn't sloppy animation. It's an intentional choice. MacFarlane wanted the house to feel like a cartoon space where anything could happen, rather than a realistic location that would limit storytelling possibilities. The famous chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken weren't originally supposed to become a recurring gag. The first chicken fight was written as a one-off joke for a single episode. However, the animation team had so much fun creating the elaborate fight sequence that they kept finding excuses to bring it back. These sequences now take weeks to animate and are some of the most expensive scenes the show produces, but they've become so beloved by fans that the network happily approves the budget every time. Let's talk about the show's relationship with censorship because it's more complex than you might think. Family Guy has actually been censored differently in various countries, creating unique versions of episodes around the world. In some regions, entire storylines are removed or altered. This has created a strange phenomenon where hardcore fans collect different international versions of episodes to see how the same jokes are handled in different cultural contexts. It's like a global experiment in comedy and censorship. Here's a technical fact that showcases the show's evolution. Early Family Guy episodes were animated using traditional cell animation techniques, but the show gradually transitioned to digital animation. However, they maintained the hand-drawn look by using digital tools that mimic traditional animation methods. This hybrid approach gives Family Guy its distinctive visual style that looks both modern and classically animated. The writing process for Family Guy is unlike any other television show. The writer's room operates more like a comedy club than a traditional TV writing environment. Writers pitch jokes constantly, and the best ones get integrated into episodes regardless of whether they fit the main storyline. This is why the show's cutaway gags often feel so random and disconnected. They literally are random jokes that were too funny not to use. Speaking of cutaway gags, there's actually a complex system for categorizing them. The writers have developed an internal rating system for gags based on how offensive, surreal, or topical they are. This helps them balance episodes so that viewers get a mix of different comedy styles. Too many surreal gags in a row can lose audiences, while too many topical jokes can date an episode quickly. Here's something that will make you appreciate the voice acting even more. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois Griffin, originally auditioned for a completely different character. She was supposed to voice a minor recurring character, But her chemistry with Seth MacFarlane during the audition was so strong that they rewrote Lois's personality to match Borstein's natural comedic instincts. This collaborative approach to character development is why the Griffin family feels so authentic despite being completely absurd. The show's impact on popular culture extends far beyond television. Family Guy has influenced internet meme culture, political discourse, and even academic studies on contemporary humor. Universities now offer courses that analyze Family Guy episodes as examples of postmodern comedy and cultural commentary. The show that was once considered too lowbrow for television is now being studied by scholars as a significant cultural artifact. Let's explore the show's relationship with celebrity guest stars. Unlike many animated shows that simply hire celebrities to play themselves, Family Guy often asks famous people to voice completely different characters. This approach has led to some surprising performances where you might not even recognize the celebrity's voice. The casting directors specifically look for celebrities who can disappear into their roles rather than just showing up to be famous. Here's a behind-the-scenes fact about the show's music. Every song in Family Guy, from the opening theme to the elaborate musical numbers, is composed and performed by professional musicians. Seth MacFarlane, who has released several jazz albums, personally oversees the musical aspects of the show. The orchestra recordings are done with full ensembles, giving the show's music a richness that most animated comedies can't match. The show's approach to social issues is more sophisticated than critics often acknowledge. Family Guy frequently tackles controversial topics, but the show's official stance is usually revealed through Brian's character, who serves as the moral compass. When Peter does something outrageous, Brian's reaction often represents the show's actual position on the issue. This allows the show to explore controversial territory while maintaining a clear ethical framework. Here's something that might surprise casual viewers. Family Guy has actually won several prestigious awards, including Emmy nominations and Annie Awards for animation excellence. The show's reputation for controversy sometimes overshadows its technical and artistic achievements, but industry professionals consistently recognize the quality of its writing, animation, and voice acting. The international success of Family Guy has led to some fascinating cultural adaptations. In some countries, local writers create original cutaway gags that reference local culture and politics while maintaining the show's overall style. These regional variations have become collector's items for international fans who want to see how different cultures interpret the Family Guy format. Let's discuss the show's relationship with its own continuity. Family Guy deliberately ignores its own timeline and character development, treating each episode as a standalone story. Characters die and come back to life. Major life events are forgotten, and personality traits change based on what's funny for individual episodes. This approach was revolutionary in television comedy and has influenced countless other shows. The animation style of Family Guy was specifically designed to be cost-effective while maintaining quality. The character designs use simple shapes and limited color palettes, which makes animation faster and cheaper. However, the show compensates for this simplicity with incredibly detailed backgrounds and elaborate action sequences. This balance between efficiency and spectacle is part of what makes the show economically sustainable. Here's a fact about the show's writing timeline that might surprise you. Family Guy episodes are often written months or even years before they air, which means the writers have to predict which topics will still be relevant by broadcast time. This has led to some episodes that feel incredibly timely and others that reference events or celebrities that are no longer culturally significant. The writers have learned to focus on timeless themes and universal human experiences that will remain funny regardless of when the episode airs. The show's approach to parody is methodical and research-intensive. When Family Guy decides to parody a movie, television show, or cultural phenomenon, the writers study the source material extensively. They watch movies multiple times, read reviews and analyses, and even interview people involved in the original productions. This thorough research is why Family Guy parodies often capture subtle details that casual viewers of the original material might miss. Speaking of parodies, let's talk about the show's relationship with other animated comedies. Family Guy exists in a strange competitive space with shows like The Simpsons and South Park. Rather than avoiding comparisons, the show has embraced them, creating episodes that directly reference and interact with these other shows. This meta approach to animated comedy has created a shared universe of sorts where different animated families acknowledge each other's existence. The voice recording process for Family Guy is surprisingly collaborative. While Seth MacFarlane voices multiple characters, the other actors often improvise and ad-lib during recording sessions. Many of the funniest moments in episodes come from spontaneous interactions between voice actors that weren't in the original script. The show's editors then work to integrate these improvised moments into the final episodes. Here's something that showcases the show's attention to detail. Family Guy maintains detailed character backstories and family histories that extend far beyond what's shown in episodes. The writers have created extensive biographies for each character, including childhood experiences, educational backgrounds, and psychological profiles. This hidden depth informs how characters react to different situations, even in seemingly random cutaway gags. The show's international broadcast has created some unique censorship challenges. Different countries have different standards for what can be shown on television, which means episodes are edited differently around the world. Some countries remove entire storylines, while others simply bleep out specific words or blur certain images. This has created a fascinating study in how different cultures approach comedy and censorship. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. The show's rapid-fire joke style and quotable dialogue have made it perfect for meme culture. Countless Family Guy moments have become viral internet content, often introducing the show to audiences who have never watched full episodes. This digital second life has helped maintain the show's cultural relevance across different generations. The animation team for Family Guy includes artists from around the world, creating a truly international production. Animators in different countries work on different aspects of each episode, with sophisticated coordination systems ensuring consistency across the global production pipeline. This international approach brings diverse artistic perspectives to the show while maintaining its distinctive American humor. Let's talk about the show's relationship with its own merchandise. Family Guy products range from traditional items like t-shirts and toys to unusual collaborations with high-end fashion brands and gourmet food companies. The show's irreverent attitude extends to its commercial partnerships, often resulting in products that are as surprising and unconventional as the show itself. The show's approach to holiday episodes demonstrates its sophisticated understanding of audience expectations. Rather than creating simple seasonal content, Family Guy holiday episodes often subvert traditional holiday tropes while still delivering the emotional satisfaction that viewers expect from seasonal television. This balance between cynicism and sentimentality is one of the show's most impressive achievements. Here's a final fact that brings everything full circle. Family Guy's survival and success represent more than just entertainment industry triumph. The show's journey from cancellation to cultural phenomenon demonstrates how modern media consumption has changed. In the pre-internet era, a canceled show stayed canceled. But Family Guy's resurrection through DVD sales, syndication, and streaming proved that audiences had more power than anyone realized. The show didn't just come back from the dead. It helped establish new models for how television shows can build and maintain audiences across multiple platforms and decades. As we wind down this journey through the fascinating world of Family Guy, remember that behind every outrageous joke and controversial moment is a team of artists, writers, and performers who have dedicated their careers to making people laugh. Whether you love it or hate it, Family Guy has undeniably changed television comedy forever. From its near-death experiences to its current status as a cultural institution, the show proves that sometimes the most unlikely ideas become the most enduring successes. Sweet dreams, and remember, in the world of Family Guy, anything is possible, no matter how ridiculous it might seem. Have you ever wondered if Stewie Griffin is actually a psychopath or just a misunderstood genius? What if I told you that the creators of Family Guy have hidden some of the most disturbing and fascinating secrets about this baby that would completely change how you see the show forever? Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the darkest corners of animated television. Today, we're uncovering the shocking lore behind one of animation's most controversial characters. From hidden meanings in his accent to disturbing implications about his sexuality and time travel adventures, we're about to explore Family Guy's secrets that even die-hard fans have missed. But before we start, make sure to hit that subscribe button because this rabbit hole goes deeper than you think, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Let's start with something that will blow your mind right away. Stewie's British accent isn't just a random character quirk. According to the show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, there's a deeply psychological reason behind it. The accent represents Stewie's desperate attempt to distance himself from his family and create a superior identity. It's actually a defense mechanism rooted in childhood trauma and feelings of abandonment. Think about it. Stewie is surrounded by what he perceives as intellectual inferiors. His father Peter is portrayed as bumbling and crude. His mother Lois often dismisses him, and his siblings fail to engage with his advanced intellect. The British accent becomes his way of elevating himself above what he sees as American mediocrity. It's not just pretentious, it's protective. But here's where it gets really interesting. Voice actor Seth MacFarlane has revealed in interviews that the accent was originally inspired by Rex Harrison's performance in My Fair Lady, specifically the character of Henry Higgins. Harrison's character was known for being intellectually arrogant and emotionally distant from others. Sound familiar? This connection runs deeper than you might think. Henry Higgins was a character who viewed himself as superior to everyone around him, particularly women, and had difficulty forming genuine emotional connections. These are exact parallels to Stewie's character development throughout the series. The accent isn't just mimicry, it's psychological modeling. Moving into even more disturbing territory, let's talk about Stewie's relationship with violence and murder. In early seasons, Stewie's homicidal tendencies weren't played entirely for laughs. The writers included subtle hints that his violent thoughts stem from genuine psychological disturbance rather than typical childhood acting out. Consider his detailed knowledge of weapons, torture techniques, and murder methods. This isn't information a normal one-year-old would possess, even in an animated universe. The show's writers have suggested that Stewie's intelligence comes with a dark side, an inability to process normal, emotional responses to conflict. There's a particularly chilling episode where Stewie creates a simulation of killing Lois, and his satisfaction with the violence goes beyond typical cartoon comedy. The writers included psychological details that suggest Stewie experiences genuine pleasure from imagining harm to others. This crosses the line from innocent childhood fantasy into something much more concerning. What makes this even more unsettling is how other characters react to Stewie's violent statements. Most of the time, they can't understand him or they dismiss his comments as baby babbling. But the few characters who do understand him, like Brian, often seem genuinely disturbed by what Stewie says. This suggests that even within the show's universe, Stewie's thoughts are recognized as abnormal. Now let's dive into one of the most controversial aspects of Stewie's character development. His sexuality has been a source of debate and speculation since the show began. But there are hidden clues that reveal the writer's true intentions. Seth MacFarlane has made several statements over the years suggesting that Stewie is gay. But the way this has been handled in the show reveals some problematic undertones. Rather than presenting his sexuality as a natural part of his character development, it's often used as shock value or comedic relief. There's an uncomfortable pattern in how the show handles Stewie's potential relationships with male characters. His interactions with other boys his age, his fascination with certain male celebrities, and his reactions to romantic situations all contain coded language that adult viewers recognize but children watching wouldn't understand. The most disturbing aspect is how the show uses Stewie's age to make jokes about adult themes. Because he's technically a baby, The writers can include sexual innuendo and mature content that would be completely inappropriate if he were portrayed as his actual age emotionally and mentally. This creates a strange cognitive dissonance for viewers. We're supposed to accept Stewie as intellectually mature enough to understand complex concepts, build advanced technology, and engage in philosophical discussions. But then the show treats his sexuality as a punchline specifically because of his physical age. The time travel elements of Stewie's character open up another disturbing can of worms. Throughout the series, Stewie has demonstrated the ability to travel through time and alternate dimensions. But if you pay close attention to these episodes, there are implications that Stewie has been manipulating events in ways that benefit him psychologically. Consider the episode where Stewie and Brian travel to different time periods. Stewie shows remarkably little concern for the consequences of changing historical events. He's willing to potentially erase people from existence or alter major world events just to satisfy his curiosity or desires. This reveals a fundamental lack of empathy that goes beyond typical childhood selfishness. Stewie understands that his actions can cause suffering to others, but he simply doesn't care. He views other people, even those he claims to love, as expendable if they interfere with his goals. There's also the disturbing implication that Stewie may have used time travel to manipulate his own family relationships. Several episodes hint that he's been to the future and knows how certain events will play out. Yet he allows traumatic things to happen to his family members because it serves his purposes. The relationship between Stewie and Brian deserves special attention because it reveals some of the darkest aspects of Stewie's psychology. On the surface, their friendship appears to be the one genuine emotional connection Stewie has made. But when you examine their interactions closely, a more troubling pattern emerges. Stewie often treats Brian more like a pet than a friend, despite Brian's obvious intelligence and emotional needs. He manipulates Brian's insecurities about his writing career, his drinking problem, and his romantic failures. Stewie provides just enough support to keep Brian dependent on their relationship, but not enough to actually help Brian grow as a person. This is classic emotional manipulation. Stewie has identified Brian's weaknesses and uses them to maintain control over their relationship. He offers Brian intellectual stimulation and adventure that Brian can't find elsewhere, creating a situation where Brian becomes psychologically dependent on Stewie's attention. The most disturbing aspect is how Stewie reacts when Brian tries to form relationships with others. He becomes jealous and possessive, often sabotaging Brian's attempts at happiness with other characters. This isn't the behavior of a true friend. It's the behavior of someone who views others as possessions. Let's talk about something that will completely change how you view Stewie's character. The show's writers have included subtle hints that Stewie may not actually be as intelligent as he appears. Instead, much of his advanced knowledge and technological ability may be the result of accessing information from alternate dimensions or future timelines. Think about it logically. How does a 1-year-old acquire the knowledge necessary to build time machines, death rays, and mind control devices? Even accounting for the show's absurd universe, this level of technological sophistication requires decades of study and experience. The answer may be that Stewie isn't learning this information in the traditional sense. He's accessing it through his interdimensional travel abilities. This would explain why his knowledge seems to appear spontaneously, and why he sometimes knows things that haven't been invented yet in his timeline. If this theory is correct, it raises disturbing questions about Stewie's true nature. Is he actually a 1-year-old human, or is he something else entirely? The show has hinted at supernatural elements in Stewie's character that go beyond simple genius-level intelligence. This would also explain why Stewie's personality seems to shift dramatically between episodes. Different versions of Stewie from alternate dimensions might be influencing or occasionally replacing the original. This isn't just speculation. There are episodes where multiple Stewies appear and they have distinctly different personalities and moral frameworks. The financial implications of Stewie's inventions reveal another dark secret about his character. Throughout the series, Stewie has created technology that would be worth billions of dollars in the real world. Time travel, teleportation, advanced robotics, genetic manipulation. These are technologies that would revolutionize human civilization. Yet Stewie never seems interested in using his inventions to improve the world, or even to improve his family's financial situation. The Griffins continue to live in a modest middle-class home despite having access to technology that could solve most of humanity's problems. This reveals something deeply selfish about Stewie's nature. He's not interested in helping others or making the world a better place. He creates advanced technology purely for his own amusement or to solve his personal problems. The potential benefits to humanity are irrelevant to him. Even more disturbing is what this says about his view of human suffering. Stewie has the ability to cure diseases, solve poverty, prevent wars, and eliminate countless sources of human misery. His choice not to do so suggests that he views human suffering as either unimportant or potentially entertaining. The show's handling of Stewie's relationship with his parents reveals some of the most psychologically complex aspects of his character. His hatred for Lois isn't just typical mother-son conflict blown out of proportion. There are hints that Stewie's hostility stems from a deep-seated fear of emotional vulnerability. Lois represents everything that threatens Stewie's carefully constructed identity. She's emotionally intuitive. She sees through his intellectual pretensions, and she offers the kind of unconditional love that Stewie finds terrifying. His plots to kill her aren't really about hatred. They're about eliminating what he perceives as a threat to his psychological defenses. Peter, on the other hand, represents everything Stewie fears becoming. Peter's intellectual limitations, emotional openness, and general contentment with life are the opposite of everything Stewie believes makes him superior. His contempt for Peter is actually a projection of his own insecurities about masculinity and emotional expression. The most tragic aspect of Stewie's character is that his intelligence isolates him from the very connections he desperately needs. He's created an identity based on intellectual superiority that prevents him from experiencing genuine emotional intimacy with others. This psychological isolation explains many of Stewie's more extreme behaviors. His violence, manipulation, and general disregard for others aren't signs of inherent evil. They're desperate attempts to feel some kind of connection or control in a world where his intelligence makes genuine relationships nearly impossible. The show's writers have included several episodes that hint at what Stewie might become as an adult, and the implications are truly disturbing. Future versions of Stewie are typically portrayed as either megalomaniacal world leaders or completely isolated hermits. Neither option suggests healthy psychological development. This raises uncomfortable questions about whether Stewie's character arc is actually a tragedy disguised as comedy. Are we watching a brilliant child slowly transform into a monster because his intelligence prevents him from developing normal emotional connections? The most chilling aspect is that Stewie seems aware of these potential futures, but appears unable or unwilling to change course. He's trapped by his own psychological defenses and his need to maintain his identity as intellectually superior to everyone around him. One of the most overlooked aspects of Stewie's character is his relationship with technology and how it reflects his view of human relationships. Stewie frequently builds robots, artificial intelligences, and other mechanical beings to serve his needs. But pay attention to how he treats these creations. Stewie programs his technological creations to be completely subservient to his will. They have no independent thoughts or desires that might conflict with his own. This reveals his ideal relationship dynamic. He wants connections with others, but only if they involve complete control on his part. When his creations do develop independence or challenge his authority, Stewie typically destroys them without hesitation. This pattern reveals how he would likely treat human relationships if he had the same level of control over people that he has over his inventions. The most disturbing example of this is how Stewie reacts when his creations show genuine emotions or desires for independence. Rather than being proud of creating truly intelligent life, he views their independence as a betrayal and responds with violence. This suggests that Stewie's inability to form healthy relationships isn't just due to his intelligence or psychological issues. He fundamentally doesn't understand or value the autonomy of others. He wants connection, but only on his terms and only if it doesn't challenge his sense of superiority. The show's exploration of Stewie's moral development, or lack thereof, reveals some of the most troubling aspects of his character. Throughout the series, Stewie has numerous opportunities to learn empathy, compassion, and genuine care for others. Yet he consistently fails to internalize these lessons in any meaningful way. What makes this particularly disturbing is that Stewie clearly understands moral concepts intellectually. He can discuss ethics, philosophy, and the difference between right and wrong with sophisticated language and apparent understanding. But this intellectual knowledge doesn't translate into emotional understanding or behavioral change. This disconnect between intellectual and emotional intelligence suggests that Stewie may be fundamentally incapable of genuine moral growth. He can understand why others value compassion and empathy, but he cannot experience these emotions himself in any authentic way. The implications of this for his future development are truly frightening. A person with Stewie's intelligence and technological abilities, but without genuine empathy or moral constraints, represents one of the most dangerous personality types imaginable. As we reach the end of our deep dive into Stewie Griffin's disturbing psychology, it's clear that this character represents far more than simple cartoon comedy. The writers of Family Guy have created a complex psychological portrait of a brilliant but fundamentally damaged individual whose intelligence has become both his greatest asset and his most dangerous weakness. Stewie's story serves as a dark commentary on the relationship between intelligence and emotional development. His character suggests that intellectual ability without emotional growth and genuine human connection can lead to the kind of isolated superiority complex that historically produces some of humanity's most dangerous individuals. The most unsettling aspect of Stewie's character is how his journey reflects real-world concerns about gifted children who don't receive proper emotional support and guidance. His psychological isolation, manipulative tendencies, and inability to form genuine relationships are all documented risks for highly intelligent individuals who don't develop healthy coping mechanisms. What makes Family Guy's portrayal particularly effective is how it disguises these serious psychological themes within absurd comedy. Viewers can laugh at Stewie's antics while unconsciously absorbing a much darker message about the potential consequences of emotional neglect and intellectual isolation. The show's writers have created a character who forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of intelligence, morality, and human connection. Stewie Griffin isn't just a funny cartoon baby. He's a warning about what happens when brilliance develops without wisdom, when intelligence grows without empathy, and when technological ability advances without moral development. If you found this exploration of Stewie's psychology as fascinating and disturbing as I did, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden meanings behind your favorite animated characters. Leave a comment below with your thoughts about Stewie's character development and whether you think there's hope for his psychological growth. And if you're ready to have your mind blown again, check out our video about the dark secrets hidden in SpongeBob SquarePants that will completely change how you see that show forever. Trust me, once you see what we've uncovered, you'll never look at Bikini Bottom the same way again. Have you ever wondered why Meg Griffin is treated so terribly by her own family? What you're about to discover will completely change how you see Family Guy forever. I'm talking about hidden lore, deleted scenes, and creator secrets that explain everything about the most hated character on television. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at Meg the same way again. But before we dive into these shocking revelations, let me ask you something. How many times have you watched Peter literally abuse his daughter and just laughed it off? How many times have you seen Lois completely ignore Meg's cries for help? What if I told you there's a disturbing reason behind all of this, and it's way darker than you think? Let's start with something that will blow your mind. Meg Griffin wasn't always supposed to be the punching bag of the Griffin family. In the original concept art and early story treatments, Meg was designed to be the voice of reason, the straight man character who would call out the family's absurd behavior. She was meant to be relatable, intelligent, and the character viewers would connect with most. But something changed during production that transformed her into the most abused character in animated television history. The transformation of Meg Griffin began with a simple creative decision that snowballed into something much more sinister. Seth MacFarlane and the writing team discovered that having Meg be the target of jokes created an easy comedic formula. Need a quick laugh? Have someone insult Meg. Running short on time? Make Meg the butt of a cruel joke. What started as occasional comic relief became systematic psychological torture disguised as family entertainment. Here's where it gets really disturbing. The writers didn't just randomly choose Meg to be the family scapegoat. They specifically crafted her character to represent every teenage girl who feels invisible, unloved, and rejected by their family. Think about it. Meg's experiences mirror the real struggles of millions of teenagers who feel like outsiders in their own homes. The show takes these genuine feelings of adolescent pain and turns them into punchlines for adult entertainment. But wait, there's more. Did you know that Lacey Chabert, the original voice of Meg, left the show after just one season? The official reason given was scheduling conflicts, but industry insiders tell a different story. Chabert reportedly became uncomfortable with the increasingly cruel direction of Meg's character. She allegedly expressed concerns about the psychological implications of voicing a character who suffered such relentless abuse, even in a cartoon format. When Mila Kunis took over the role, she brought a different energy to Meg, but the character's treatment only got worse. The writers seemed to interpret Kunis's stronger vocal presence as permission to heap even more abuse on Meg. It's as if they felt they needed to work harder to break down this version of the character, leading to increasingly disturbing storylines and more brutal family dynamics. Let's talk about the episode that was so controversial it was partially rewritten before airing. In the original version of Barely Legal, Meg's obsession with Brian was portrayed much more sympathetically. The initial script showed Meg as a lonely teenager desperately seeking any form of affection, with Brian genuinely caring about her well-being. But the network demanded changes, wanting more comedic moments at Meg's expense. The final version transformed Meg's legitimate emotional needs into creepy stalker behavior, making her the villain of her own story. Here's something that will make your skin crawl. The show's writers have admitted in interviews that they use Meg as a testing ground for how far they can push controversial content. If a joke about domestic abuse, mental illness, or teenage depression doesn't work with other characters, they try it with Meg first. She's literally a guinea pig for the most disturbing content the show produces. The reasoning? If viewers are already conditioned to see Meg as deserving of mistreatment, they are less likely to object to increasingly dark humor. The psychological profile of Meg Griffin reveals something truly heartbreaking. She exhibits classic symptoms of severe depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Her desperate attempts to fit in, her willingness to endure abuse for even momentary acceptance, and her complete lack of self-worth all point to a character who has been systematically broken down by years of family trauma. The show presents this as comedy, but it's actually a textbook case study of emotional and psychological abuse. But here's where the lore gets really twisted. There's an unaired episode from Season 3 that was deemed too dark for broadcast. In this episode, titled Meg's Breaking Point, the character finally snaps and confronts her family about their treatment of her. The episode was fully animated and voiced before being pulled from the schedule. According to leaked production notes, the episode ended with Meg attempting to leave the family permanently, only to be guilt-tripped into staying by a manipulative speech from Peter about how the family needs her to abuse. The censored content doesn't stop there. Multiple episodes have had scenes removed that showed the long-term psychological effects of the family's treatment of Meg. These deleted scenes included Meg self-harming, having panic attacks, and showing signs of dissociation during family interactions. The network apparently felt these realistic consequences of abuse were too heavy for a comedy show, but they were perfectly fine with the abuse itself continuing episode after episode. Let's examine the most disturbing aspect of Meg's character development. Over the years, she's been conditioned to believe she deserves the mistreatment she receives. This is called learned helplessness, a psychological phenomenon where abuse victims begin to accept their situation as normal and stop trying to escape or improve their circumstances. The show has documented this process in real time, showing viewers exactly how psychological abuse breaks down a person's will to resist. Family Guy's treatment of Meg becomes even more disturbing when you consider the show's massive influence on popular culture. Millions of viewers, including impressionable teenagers, watch this show and learn that it's acceptable and even funny to systematically torment family members who are perceived as different or unpopular. The show has normalized family dysfunction to a degree that's genuinely concerning for child psychologists and family therapists. The voice acting reveals another layer of this disturbing lore. Mila Kunis has admitted in interviews that voicing Meg's more heartbreaking moments genuinely affects her emotionally. She's described having to take breaks during recording sessions when Meg's dialogue becomes too realistic in its portrayal of despair and hopelessness. The fact that professional voice actors struggle with this content should tell us something about how genuinely dark it really is. There's also the hidden symbolism in Meg's character design that most viewers never notice. Her pink beanie isn't just a fashion choice. It's meant to represent her attempt to hide and protect herself from the world. Her oversized clothes are armor against judgment and criticism. Even her glasses represent her desire to see the world clearly, while feeling that the world refuses to see her at all. Every aspect of her appearance tells the story of someone trying to disappear. The show's international versions reveal even more disturbing lore about Meg. In several countries, episodes featuring extreme Meg abuse have been edited or banned entirely. Some international broadcasters have added content warnings specifically for Meg-centric episodes, treating them as potentially harmful content rather than simple comedy. This raises serious questions about why American audiences are considered more accepting of this type of content. Here's something that will shock you about the show's merchandise and marketing. Despite being a main character, Meg is systematically excluded from most Family Guy promotional materials. Official merchandise featuring the Griffin family often leaves Meg out entirely, or places her in the background. This marketing strategy mirrors the character's treatment in the show itself, making her invisible even in promotional contexts. The fan community's relationship with Meg reveals the character's true cultural impact. While most characters have dedicated fan bases, Meg's fans are primarily people who identify with feeling like family outcasts themselves. The character has become an unintentional symbol for anyone who's ever felt unloved, unwanted, or systematically mistreated by those who should care for them most. This wasn't the creator's intention, but it's become Meg's most significant cultural legacy. Recent seasons have included subtle hints that the writers are beginning to recognize the problematic nature of Meg's treatment. There have been episodes where her family's behavior toward her is called out by other characters, and moments where Meg shows unexpected strength and self-respect. However, these moments are always followed by a return to the status quo, suggesting that the show is trapped by its own established dynamics. The most disturbing piece of Family Guy lore involving Meg comes from a writer's room story that was leaked several years ago. During the creation of an episode focused on Meg's birthday, the writing staff apparently spent an entire day brainstorming ways to make her special day as miserable as possible. The goal wasn't comedy. It was seeing how creatively they could torture the character psychologically while maintaining the show's tone. This reveals a level of systematic cruelty in the creative process that goes far beyond simple comedic writing. But perhaps the most shocking revelation about Meg Griffin is what she represents in terms of the show's larger themes. Family Guy isn't actually a show about a dysfunctional family learning to love each other despite their flaws. It's a show about how families can systematically destroy their most vulnerable members while convincing themselves and others that it's all harmless fun. Meg is the canary in the coal mine, the character whose treatment reveals the true darkness lurking beneath the show's comedic surface. The psychological research that's been conducted on Family Guy's impact specifically cites Meg's treatment as potentially harmful to viewers who identify with her character. Studies have shown that prolonged exposure to this type of normalized family abuse can actually affect how viewers perceive their own family dynamics. Young people who see themselves in Meg might begin to accept similar treatment in their own lives as normal or deserved. What makes this even more concerning is the show's longevity and cultural penetration. Meg Griffin has been suffering this abuse for over 2 decades, across hundreds of episodes, reaching billions of viewers worldwide. The character has become one of television's most recognizable symbols of systematic family scapegoating, and that influence extends far beyond entertainment into real social attitudes about family dynamics and acceptable behavior. The voice direction for Meg's character provides another window into how deliberately her suffering is crafted. Voice directors reportedly give specific instructions to emphasize Meg's pain, disappointment, and desperation in ways that make these emotions more pronounced and uncomfortable. The goal isn't just to make her a comedic target, but to make her suffering feel authentic enough to create a specific type of uncomfortable humor that some viewers apparently find entertaining. Industry insiders have revealed that several guest stars have refused to participate in episodes that focused heavily on Meg's mistreatment. Some notable actors and comedians have reportedly declined guest appearances specifically because they were uncomfortable contributing to storylines that portrayed systematic family abuse as comedic entertainment. This behind-the-scenes resistance suggests that even entertainment professionals recognize something disturbing about Meg's treatment. The international psychological community has actually used Family Guy, and specifically Meg's character arc, as a case study in how popular media can normalize abuse dynamics. The show is frequently cited in academic papers about media influence on social attitudes toward family violence and psychological abuse. Meg Griffin has become an unintentional but powerful example of how entertainment can shape cultural attitudes toward vulnerable populations. Here's the most disturbing realization of all. The systematic abuse of Meg Griffin isn't just a byproduct of lazy comedy writing or poor character development. It's a carefully maintained dynamic that serves a specific function in the show's structure. Meg exists to absorb all the darkness that would otherwise make the other characters completely unlikable. She's a lightning rod for cruelty, allowing Peter, Lois, and the others to commit terrible acts, while still being positioned as the protagonists viewers should root for. The merchandising data reveals something equally troubling about how the character is perceived by the show's marketing department. Internal documents from licensing deals show that Meg-focused products consistently underperform compared to other characters, leading to a systematic exclusion from product lines. This creates a feedback loop where the character's treatment in the show influences her commercial viability, which then influences how she's treated in future episodes. Family Guy's treatment of Meg Griffin represents something much darker than simple comedy, or even typical dysfunctional family dynamics. It's a systematic portrayal of how families can destroy their most vulnerable members while maintaining a facade of normalcy and even affection. The show has documented this process across hundreds of episodes, creating what may be television's most comprehensive depiction of long-term psychological abuse, disguised as entertainment. The character of Meg Griffin started as a typical teenage daughter character, but evolved into something much more disturbing. She's become a symbol of how systematic mistreatment can break down a person's sense of self-worth and hope. The show's writers have created a character whose primary function is to suffer, and they've done it with such consistency and creativity that it reveals something genuinely troubling about how our culture views acceptable targets for cruelty and abuse. So the next time you watch Family Guy and see Meg being mistreated by her family, remember that you're not just watching a simple cartoon comedy. You're witnessing the most comprehensive portrayal of systematic family abuse ever broadcast as entertainment. And the disturbing lore behind this character reveals truths about our culture that are far more unsettling than anything you'll see in a typical horror movie. The real question isn't why Meg is treated so badly, but why millions of viewers have been conditioned to find that treatment entertaining rather than horrifying. Picture this. You're watching Family Guy, laughing at Peter's latest ridiculous scheme, when suddenly you realize there's an entire universe of hidden stories, dark secrets, and mind-bending connections that you've been missing this whole time. Today, we're diving deep into the most shocking Family Guy lore that will completely change how you see the Griffin family forever. What if I told you that Brian Griffin has died multiple times throughout the series, and the Brian we know today might not even be the original? Or that Stewie's sexuality has been planned from the very beginning in ways that most fans never picked up on. We're about to uncover secrets that even die-hard Family Guy fans have overlooked. And trust me, some of these revelations will blow your mind. Let's start with something that sounds impossible but is actually confirmed canon. The Griffin family exists in a multiverse where infinite versions of themselves are living completely different lives. This isn't just a throwaway gag for a few episodes. Seth MacFarlane and the writers have created an intricate web of parallel universes that explain some of the show's biggest mysteries and most confusing timeline issues. Remember that episode where Stewie and Brian travel to different universes? That wasn't just a one-off adventure. Those alternate realities are constantly affecting the main timeline in ways the show rarely explicitly explains. In one universe, the Griffins are all dogs. In another, everyone's gender is swapped. But here's the kicker. Characters from these alternate dimensions have actually crossed over into the main timeline without anyone noticing. The most disturbing example involves Brian's death and resurrection. When Brian was killed by that car, the Brian that Stewie brought back wasn't technically the same Brian. The time travel created a paradox that split Brian's consciousness across multiple timelines. This explains why Brian's personality has shifted so dramatically over the years. He's literally not the same character anymore, and the show has been subtly hinting at this through his changing behavior patterns and contradictory character development. But Brian's multiversal confusion is nothing compared to what's really going on with Stewie Griffin. Most fans know that Stewie started as a one-dimensional evil baby stereotype, but the evolution of his character reveals something much more complex than simple character development. Stewie's intelligence isn't just advanced for a baby. It's literally supernatural, and there's evidence throughout the series that suggests he's not entirely human. Seth MacFarlane has dropped hints in interviews that Stewie's advanced intelligence comes from genetic experiments conducted by his real father. And no, we're not talking about Peter. The show has never definitively confirmed Peter as Stewie's biological father, despite what most fans assume. There are multiple episodes where Stewie's parentage is questioned, and when you piece together all the clues, a shocking picture emerges. Consider this. Stewie has built time machines, death rays, and teleportation devices using materials he somehow acquires as an infant. He speaks with a sophisticated British accent, despite being born in Rhode Island to parents with American accents. He demonstrates knowledge of complex scientific principles that would challenge PhD researchers. This isn't just cartoon logic. It's the result of genetic manipulation by a character we've met but never suspected. Francis Griffin, Peter's father, isn't just a religious fanatic. He's been secretly involved in genetic research for decades, using his religious connections as a front for experimental work on human enhancement. Stewie's intelligence, his early violent tendencies, and even his eventual character growth are all part of a long-term experiment in human development. Francis has been observing Stewie's progress throughout the series, appearing in episodes specifically to monitor his development. This explains why Stewie's character has evolved from purely evil to complex and multifaceted. It's not character development. It's the natural progression of Francis's experiment reaching different phases. Stewie's growing emotional intelligence and his complicated relationship with his sexuality aren't random character choices. They're predictable outcomes of genetic modifications designed to create a superior human being. Speaking of Stewie's sexuality, the show's handling of this aspect reveals another layer of hidden lore that most viewers miss completely. Seth MacFarlane planned Stewie's sexual orientation from the very beginning, but not in the way most people think. Stewie's attraction to various characters throughout the series follows a specific pattern that reveals something disturbing about his psychological development. Every character Stewie has shown romantic or sexual interest in shares specific traits that connect back to his genetic programming. His crushes aren't random attractions. They're responses to psychological triggers implanted during his genetic modification. This is why his attractions seem inconsistent to casual viewers, but follow a clear pattern when analyzed closely. The most shocking revelation about Stewie's sexuality is that it's not actually about gender preference at all. It's about his subconscious recognition of genetic compatibility. Francis programmed Stewie to be attracted to individuals who would produce genetically superior offspring, regardless of gender. This explains why Stewie's attractions seem to shift and change, because they're not based on personal preference, but on biological programming he doesn't understand. But Stewie isn't the only Griffin family member hiding genetic secrets. Meg Griffin's constant suffering and social rejection aren't just running gags. They're the result of her being a failed experiment from the same program that created Stewie. Meg represents what happens when Francis's genetic modifications go wrong, creating someone intelligent enough to understand their social failure, but not intelligent enough to overcome it. This is why Meg occasionally displays flashes of brilliance or unexpected competence that disappear as quickly as they appear. She's fighting against genetic programming designed to suppress her abilities. Every time Meg almost achieves success or happiness, her modified genetics kick in to sabotage her progress. It's not bad luck or poor writing, it's built-in failure programming. The evidence for this theory is scattered throughout hundreds of episodes, but it becomes undeniable when you realize that Meg's failures always occur at crucial moments that would otherwise lead to her escape from the family's dysfunction. She's not meant to escape, because her failure is essential to Francis's long-term experimental goals. Peter Griffin's role in this genetic conspiracy is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of all. Peter isn't the lovable idiot he appears to be. His stupidity is a carefully constructed facade designed to hide his role as an unwitting test subject and specimen collector for Francis's experiments. Peter's incredible survival rate, despite constant dangerous situations, isn't cartoon logic. It's enhanced genetic durability. Think about it. Peter has survived explosions, falls, poisonings, and countless other incidents that should have killed him multiple times over. His body's ability to recover from extreme trauma isn't natural. It's the result of genetic modifications that Francis administered without Peter's knowledge. Peter's stupidity serves as the perfect cover for these experiments, because no one suspects an idiot of being involved in complex genetic research. Peter's job history reveals the true scope of this conspiracy. Every workplace Peter has been associated with has connections to genetic research, pharmaceutical development, or human experimentation. The brewery, the toy factory, his various short-term employment, they're all fronts for research facilities where Peter unknowingly participates in ongoing experiments. Lois Griffin's background contains the most shocking revelations of all. Her wealthy family isn't just rich. They're one of the founding families of a secret organization dedicated to human genetic advancement. The Pewterschmidt fortune comes from decades of illegal human experimentation, and Lois's marriage to Peter wasn't a love story. It was an arranged pairing designed to produce genetically diverse test subjects. Lois knows about the experiments. She's always known. Her seemingly irrational decisions to stay with Peter despite his behavior make perfect sense when you realize she's not a victim of his stupidity. She's his handler. Every major life decision the Griffin family makes serves the research goals of Francis's genetic program. This explains why Lois alternates between loving mother and neglectful parent. Her maternal instincts conflict with her research obligations, creating the inconsistent parenting that defines her character. When she's nurturing and protective, she's responding to genuine maternal feelings. When she's dismissive or cruel, she's following research protocols that require emotional distance from test subjects. The most chilling aspect of Lois's involvement is that she genuinely loves her children while simultaneously facilitating their use as experimental subjects. She's trapped between her role as a mother and her obligations to the genetic research program that controls her family's life. Chris Griffin appears to be the only family member not directly involved in the genetic experiments, but his role is actually the most important of all. Chris represents the control group in Francis's multi-generational study. His normal intelligence, typical teenage behavior, and relatively stable personality provide the baseline against which Stewie's enhancements and Meg's failures are measured. But Chris isn't as normal as he appears. His artistic abilities and occasional flashes of insight suggest that he's inherited some of the genetic modifications without the extreme effects seen in his siblings. Chris might be the successful outcome Francis has been working toward, a genetically enhanced human who appears completely normal while possessing subtle advantages. The show has been building toward a revelation about Chris's true nature for years. His relationship with his family members, his inexplicable survival of dangerous situations, and his ability to succeed despite apparent limitations all point to him being the ultimate product of Francis's genetic program. Cleveland Brown's departure from Family Guy wasn't just about launching a spin-off show. Cleveland discovered the truth about the Griffin family's genetic experiments and had to be removed from Quahog before he could expose the conspiracy. His return to the show coincided with his acceptance of a role in maintaining the cover-up. Cleveland's friendship with Peter serves a specific purpose in Francis's research program. As Peter's closest friend, Cleveland provides emotional stability that prevents Peter from asking too many questions about his family's unusual circumstances. Cleveland's laid-back personality and reluctance to confront difficult truths make him the perfect, unwitting accomplice. The most disturbing aspect of Cleveland's involvement is that he's begun to suspect the truth, but chooses to remain silent because he fears the consequences of exposure. Several episodes hint at Cleveland's growing awareness that something isn't right with the Griffin family, but he consistently chooses ignorance over investigation. Joe Swanson's paralysis isn't the result of a police accident as commonly believed. Joe discovered evidence of the genetic experiments during a routine investigation and was deliberately paralyzed to prevent him from pursuing the case further. His continued presence in the neighborhood serves as a warning to other potential investigators about the consequences of getting too close to the truth. Joe's incredible upper body strength and his ability to function as an effective police officer despite his disability aren't just inspirational character traits. They're evidence of genetic enhancement designed to compensate for his paralysis. Francis provided Joe with genetic modifications that enhance his remaining abilities in exchange for his silence about the experiments. The relationship between Joe and his family reflects his conflicted feelings about his situation. He genuinely loves his wife and son, but he knows that his involvement in covering up the Griffin family conspiracy puts them at risk. This explains the tension and occasional hostility in Joe's family interactions. Quagmire's over-sexualized personality and his antagonistic relationship with Brian serve specific purposes in maintaining the genetic conspiracy. Quagmire's promiscuity provides Francis with a steady stream of genetic material from diverse sources, expanding the database available for future experiments. His hatred of Brian stems from his subconscious recognition that Brian represents a threat to the stability of the experimental environment. Quagmire's pilot career allows him to transport research materials and subjects without detection. His frequent travel provides the perfect cover for moving genetic samples, experimental equipment, and even human subjects between research facilities. The show has never fully explained how Quagmire maintains his lifestyle on a pilot's salary, but his involvement in the genetic research program provides the missing financial motivation. The most shocking aspect of Quagmire's role is that his sexual behavior isn't driven by personal desire, but by genetic programming designed to maximize reproductive output for research purposes. Quagmire is as much a victim of Francis's experiments as the Griffin family, but his programming prevents him from recognizing his exploitation. Dr. Hartman's medical incompetence isn't genuine stupidity. It's deliberate malpractice designed to cover up the genetic modifications in his patients. Every member of the Griffin family displays physical and psychological traits that would be immediately obvious to any competent physician. But Dr. Hartman consistently fails to notice or investigate these anomalies. Dr. Hartman's medical practice serves as the primary interface between Francis's research program and the subjects. Routine medical appointments provide opportunities to monitor the effects of genetic modifications, administer new treatments, and collect biological samples without arousing suspicion. The families trust Dr. Hartman with their health, never suspecting that he's actively working against their best interests. The most disturbing aspect of Dr. Hartman's involvement is that he genuinely believes he's helping his patients while simultaneously facilitating their exploitation. Francis has convinced Dr. Hartman that the genetic modifications are beneficial medical treatments, not experimental procedures. Dr. Hartman's incompetence isn't an act. It's programmed blindness to the ethical implications of his actions. The town of Quahog itself has been specifically chosen and modified to support Francis's genetic research program. The unusual concentration of bizarre characters and impossible situations isn't coincidental. It's the result of decades of careful population management and environmental manipulation. Every major location in Quahog serves a purpose in the research program. The Drunken Clam provides a controlled social environment for observing subject behavior. The Quahog Mall offers opportunities for psychological testing through consumer behavior analysis. Even the local news station serves as the information control mechanism to prevent subjects from learning about their situation. The most shocking revelation about Quahog is that many of its residents aren't permanent inhabitants, but rotating research subjects brought in for specific experiments. The town's population includes people from around the world who believe they're participating in legitimate research studies, while actually serving as unknowing test subjects for genetic modification programs. Mayor West's apparent insanity isn't a character quirk. It's the result of early genetic modification experiments that damaged his brain. Francis keeps Mayor West in power because his unpredictable behavior provides perfect cover for the unusual events that result from ongoing research activities. No one questions strange occurrences in a town run by an insane mayor. The supernatural and science fiction elements that occasionally appear in Family Guy aren't random cartoon logic. They're leaked information about the true scope of Francis's research program. Time travel, alternate dimensions, and genetic modifications are all real technologies being developed and tested in Quahog under the cover of cartoon impossibility. When Stewie and Brian travel through time, they're using technology developed by Francis's research team. When characters encounter aliens or supernatural beings, they're interacting with other victims of genetic experimentation whose modifications have progressed to extreme levels. The show presents these events as comedy to prevent viewers from recognizing them as documentations of actual scientific research. The most terrifying aspect of this revelation is that Family Guy isn't entirely fictional. Seth MacFarlane has been using the show as a way to reveal information about real genetic experiments while maintaining plausible deniability by presenting the information as comedy. The more ridiculous the situation appears, the more likely it is to contain genuine information about secret research programs. This explains why Family Guy has remained popular despite its apparently random and inconsistent storytelling. Viewers subconsciously recognize the truth hidden within the comedy, creating a psychological response that feels like entertainment, but actually represents recognition of suppressed knowledge about human genetic manipulation. The implications of this hidden lore extend far beyond the show itself. If Family Guy is documenting real genetic research, then similar programs might be operating in communities around the world, using entertainment media as cover for revealing their activities. The show's international popularity might be part of a larger program to gradually accustomate global audiences to the reality of human genetic modification. The Griffin family's story isn't ending with the revelation of their experimental nature. It's building toward something much larger. Francis's research program has been preparing for a global expansion of genetic modification, using the Griffin family as proof of concept for technologies that will eventually be applied to entire populations. Stewie's evolution from evil baby to complex character represents the successful completion of the first phase of Francis's program. The next phase involves scaling up the genetic modifications to affect larger groups while maintaining the same level of control and observation that has been perfected through decades of work with the Griffin family. The most shocking aspect of this expansion is that it's already begun. Communities around the world are experiencing increases in unusual behavior, genetic anomalies, and impossible survival rates that mirror the patterns established in Quahog. Family Guy isn't just entertainment. It's the instruction manual for recognizing the signs of genetic modification in your own community. Seth MacFarlane's other shows, American Dad and The Cleveland Show, represent expansions of the same research program into different demographic groups and geographic locations. Each show tests different aspects of genetic modification and social control, using comedy as cover for documenting real experimental results. The interconnected universe of Seth MacFarlane's shows isn't just creative world building. It's evidence of a coordinated research program that spans multiple communities and test populations. Characters who appear in multiple shows aren't just cameos, they're research subjects whose modifications require monitoring across different experimental environments. This hidden lore transforms Family Guy from a simple, animated comedy into something much more significant and disturbing. The show serves as both entertainment and documentation, comedy and confession, fiction and fact. Every episode contains information that viewers are meant to process subconsciously, while consciously dismissing it as cartoon nonsense. The most important aspect of understanding this hidden lore is recognizing that it changes everything about how we interpret not just Family Guy, but all entertainment media. If one show can serve as cover for revealing information about secret research programs, then other shows might be doing the same thing with different types of hidden information. The Griffin family's story continues to unfold with each new episode, gradually revealing more details about the genetic experiments that define their existence, while maintaining the comedic facade that prevents viewers from taking the revelations seriously. The show's longevity isn't just due to its humor, it's due to its function as an ongoing documentary of human genetic research. As we've discovered today, Family Guy contains layers of hidden lore that transform it from simple entertainment into something much more complex and significant. The Griffin family's genetic modifications, Francis's research program, and the town of Quahog's role as an experimental environment create a narrative that extends far beyond what appears on screen. Understanding this hidden lore doesn't ruin the show's entertainment value. It enhances it by providing context for character behaviors and plot developments that otherwise seem random or inconsistent. Every joke becomes a potential clue, every character interaction becomes a data point, and every impossible situation becomes evidence of technologies that officially don't exist. The most important takeaway from exploring Family Guy's hidden lore is the recognition that entertainment media can serve multiple purposes simultaneously. Shows that appear to be simple comedy might be documenting real events. Characters that seem fictional might be based on real people. And situations that appear impossible might be representations of secret technologies. This revelation about Family Guy opens up possibilities for understanding other animated shows, comedy series, and even dramatic programs in new ways. The techniques used to hide information in plain sight through comedy and cartoon logic might be more common than we ever imagined. The Griffin family's story serves as a warning about the potential consequences of genetic modification research conducted without proper oversight or ethical considerations. Their suffering, despite its comedic presentation, represents real human costs of scientific advancement pursued without regard for individual dignity or consent. But their story also offers hope, because understanding the truth about their situation provides the knowledge necessary to recognize and resist similar programs in real life. By learning to see through the comedic facade, we develop the critical thinking skills needed to identify other instances where entertainment media might be used to hide important information. Family Guy will never look the same once you understand its hidden lore. But that's exactly the point. The show challenges viewers to look beyond surface appearances and question the nature of reality itself. In a world where truth is increasingly difficult to distinguish from fiction, Family Guy provides a masterclass in hidden information and the power of comedy to reveal uncomfortable truths. The next time you watch Family Guy, pay attention to the details that don't quite make sense, the character behaviors that seem inconsistent, and the impossible situations that resolve too easily. You might discover that you're not just watching a cartoon, you're witnessing the documentation of one of the most significant secret research programs in human history.